The young team leader, Jason, forced me into retirement. He said, "This technology isn't for people your age." He dismissed my 30 years of experience as irrelevant, until he learned at the board meeting that my father was the company's founder, and I was a 35% shareholder. I said, "You're fired." My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 63 years old, and I just witnessed the most spectacular display of workplace ageism in my 3 decades in the technology industry transform into the most satisfying demonstration of corporate hierarchy that I'd ever delivered. But what team leader Jason Rodriguez didn't understand was that dismissing a senior employee based on age assumptions wasn't just discriminatory. It was professional suicide when that employee's family founded the company. Standing in the boardroom 6 weeks after Jason had forced my retirement, watching his face go pale as I announced his termination to the executive team, I felt the deep satisfaction of generational wisdom triumphing over youthful arrogance. But according to Jason's version of our workplace dynamic, he had been modernizing an outdated team structure by removing employees who couldn't adapt to current technology trends. The company where this dramatic confrontation had occurred was TechVision Systems, a software development firm that my father, David Mitchell, had founded in 1985 and that I had inherited a 35% ownership stake in, while working as a senior software architect for the past 8 years, to understand how Jason had been able to convince himself that he could force me into retirement without consequences, and how I had been able to orchestrate his immediate termination while teaching him an unforgettable lesson about respecting experience. I need to explain the family business history and the workplace dynamic that had led to his career ending. Mistake. TechVision Systems had been founded by my father as a small consulting firm, specializing in database management and enterprise software solutions. Over 38 years, it had grown into a 200-employee company, generating $45 million in annual revenue. "Robert, this company will be part of your legacy someday," my father had told me when I joined the firm in 2015 after a successful career at Microsoft and Oracle. "But I want you to earn your position through merit, not family connections." "I understand, Dad. I want to contribute based on my experience and skills. That's why I'm not announcing our family relationship to the general staff. You'll be hired and evaluated like any other senior architect." My father's decision to keep our family relationship private had been designed to ensure that I would be judged on my professional contributions rather than my inheritance. But it had created the circumstances that would allow Jason to make his catastrophic error. The ownership structure of TechVision Systems had been carefully planned through estate planning attorneys to ensure family control while providing tax advantages and succession planning. I owned 35% of the company through a family trust, while my father retained 40% ownership, and the remaining 25% was held by early employees and investors. "Your ownership stake makes you one of the 3 largest shareholders," family attorney Patricia Walsh had explained during our estate planning meetings. "You have significant influence over company direction and personnel decisions." However, my ownership position had been documented through legal entities that weren't obvious to employees who didn't have access to corporate governance documents. "Most employees assume that senior management and the board make all major decisions," Patricia had continued. "They don't realize that ownership can override administrative authority." This disconnect between perceived and actual power had been exactly what would make Jason's ageism both shocking and ultimately self-destructive. My role as a senior software architect had been legitimate and had been based on my 25 years of experience at major technology companies before joining TechVision. I had been responsible for system architecture, technology strategy, and mentoring junior developers. Robert brings exactly the kind of enterprise-level experience we need, CTO Jennifer Chun had told the development team when I'd been hired. His background with large-scale implementations will be invaluable. The work I had been doing had been both technically sophisticated and strategically important to the company's growth plans. Far from being an outdated employee, I had been instrumental in several major client acquisitions and technology upgrades. Your architectural decisions on the Henderson Industries project saved us months of development time. Project manager Sarah Williams had observed after one of our successful implementations. Jason Rodriguez had been hired as a team leader 6 months earlier, fresh from a startup environment and eager to implement what he considered modern management practices. At 28 years old, he had strong technical skills, but limited experience with complex enterprise environments. I want to shake up the development process and make sure we're operating with maximum efficiency, Jason had announced during his first team meeting. What specific changes are you considering? I had asked. We need to eliminate bottlenecks and make sure everyone on the team is contributing at full capacity. Jason's language about bottlenecks and full capacity had been the first indication that he was planning to evaluate team members with metrics that might not account for the strategic value of senior expertise. The age discrimination had begun. Subtly, with Jason making comments about keeping up with technology trends and adapting to modern development practices. Robert, I think you might benefit from some training on current Agile methodologies, Jason had suggested during one of our one-on-one meetings. I'm familiar with Agile development. I was implementing iterative approaches at Microsoft before they had formal names. But the specific frameworks we're using now are different from what was standard 5 or 10 years ago. Jason, enterprise architecture principles don't change dramatically from year to year. The fundamentals I learned building systems for Fortune 500 companies are still relevant. I think there might be some generational differences in how we approach problem solving. Jason's reference to generational differences had been the first direct indication that he was viewing my contributions through the lens of age, bias rather than objective performance evaluation. The discrimination had escalated over several weeks, with Jason consistently undermining my authority, excluding me from strategic discussions, and questioning my technical decisions in front of junior team members. Robert, I think we should have Alex handle the database optimization instead of you, Jason had said during one team meeting. I designed the database architecture for this project. I'm the most qualified person to handle optimization. Alex has more recent experience with the specific tools we're using. The tools are less important than understanding the data structures and business logic. That's where my experience provides value. I think we need to prioritize efficiency over theoretical knowledge. Jason's dismissal of my experience as theoretical knowledge had been both insulting and professionally damaging, as it had undermined my credibility with team members who didn't understand the strategic importance of architectural expertise. Hostile work environment had continued to deteriorate, with Jason implementing policies and practices that seemed designed to highlight my age and create justification for my removal. We're going to start requiring all team members to attend evening training sessions on emerging technologies, Jason had announced. What specific technologies are we covering? Various frameworks and tools that younger developers are more familiar with. Are these technologies relevant to our current projects? They represent the direction the industry is moving. Team members who can't keep up with these trends may not be suitable for long-term positions. Jason's implication that older employees who couldn't attend evening training sessions might be unsuitable for long-term positions had been a clear example of age discrimination disguised as professional development requirements. The forced retirement conversation had occurred on a Friday afternoon when Jason had called me into his office for what he had described as a career planning discussion. Robert, I've been evaluating team performance and considering our strategic direction moving forward. What conclusions have you reached? I think it's time for us to have an honest conversation about whether this position is still the right Fit for your career stage. What do you mean by career stage? You're 63 years old, and this is a rapidly evolving technical environment. This technology isn't for people your age. Jason's direct statement that the technology isn't for people your age had been textbook age discrimination and had provided clear evidence of his illegal bias. Jason, my age doesn't affect my ability to contribute to this team. Robert, I think you'd be happier in retirement. You've had a successful career, and it might be time to step back and let younger people handle the technical challenges. Are you suggesting that I should retire? I'm suggesting that we discuss a transition plan that would allow you to retire with dignity while we bring in someone who's more aligned with our current needs. What if I don't want to retire? Robert, I'm trying to offer you a graceful exit. If you're not interested in retirement, we might have to consider whether your position is still necessary. Jason's threat to eliminate my position if I didn't accept voluntary retirement had been the final confirmation that he was engaging in systematic age discrimination. However, what Jason hadn't realized was that his attempt to force my retirement would trigger a corporate governance response that would expose his discrimination while ending his own career. The board of directors meeting that had been scheduled for the following week had provided the perfect opportunity to address Jason's behavior while revealing the family and ownership connections that would make his actions even more inexcusable. Robert, are you planning to attend next week's board meeting? My father had asked during our regular Sunday dinner. Yes, and I think we need to discuss some personnel issues that have arisen. What kind of personnel issues? Age discrimination and hostile work environment created by one of the team leaders. That's serious. Do you have documentation? Extensive documentation, including recorded conversations where the team leader explicitly stated that the technology isn't for people my age. We'll need to address this immediately. The company can't tolerate that kind of discrimination. The board meeting revelation had been carefully orchestrated to maximize both the educational impact on ND, Jason, and the protective effect for other senior employees who might face similar discrimination. Before we discuss quarterly performance metrics, I need to address a serious personnel issue. I had begun during the meeting attended by Jason, senior management, and the board of directors. What personnel issue? CEO Michael Roberts had asked. Age discrimination and forced retirement attempts by team leader Jason Rodriguez. Those are serious accusations. What evidence do you have? Recorded conversations where Mr. Rodriguez explicitly stated that our technology isn't for people my age and threatened my employment if I didn't accept voluntary retirement. The evidence I had presented had included audio recordings, email communications, and witness statements from other team members who had observed Jason's discriminatory behavior. Mr. Rodriguez, do you have any response to these allegations? Board Chairman Patricia Walsh had asked. I was trying to optimize team performance and help Robert transition to retirement. Jason had replied, apparently still not understanding the severity of his situation. By telling him that technology isn't for people his age, I was suggesting that he might be more comfortable in a less demanding role. Jason's continued defense of his age discrimination had made his termination inevitable, but the family revelation that followed had made it personally satisfying. Jason, before we discuss your termination, I think you should understand exactly who you've been discriminating against, I had said. I don't understand. This company was founded by my father, David Mitchell. I own 35% of the company, and I am one of the 3 largest shareholders. The expression on Jason's face had been a mixture of shock, horror, and dawning realization of the magnitude of his career-ending mistake. You single quotes, You're the founder's son? Yes, and you just attempted to force the son of the company founder into retirement based on age discrimination. I didn't know... Your ignorance of my family connections doesn't excuse your illegal discrimination against a senior employee and major shareholder. The board vote to terminate Jason's employment had been unanimous and immediate. Mr. Rodriguez, your age discrimination violates both company policy and federal employment law, Chairman Walsh had announced. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. This isn't fair. I was just trying to improve team efficiency. By illegally discriminating against employees based on age, you're fired. The satisfaction of using Jason's own words, "you're fired," to end his employment had been both appropriate and deeply gratifying. The aftermath of Jason's termination had been swift and educational for the entire organization. His case had become a company-wide example of why age discrimination was both illegal and professionally destructive. Jason's situation demonstrates that discrimination has serious consequences, regardless of the perpetrator's intentions or ignorance. CEO Roberts had announced during the all-hands meeting following the termination. The workplace culture improvements that had followed had been significant. The company had implemented comprehensive anti-discrimination training, established clear reporting procedures for bias incidents, and created mentorship programs that paired senior and junior employees. Roberts' experience shows why we need to value expertise and experience rather than making assumptions based on age. New team leader Sarah Martinez had said during our first team meeting after Jason's departure, 6 months after Jason's termination, I had been promoted to Chief Technology Officer, a position that better reflected both my technical expertise and my ownership stake in the company. Your architectural decisions and strategic thinking have been invaluable, CEO Roberts had told me during the promotion announcement. This role will allow you to have greater impact on our technology direction. The promotion had been both professionally satisfying and had sent a clear message to the organization about the value placed on experience and expertise. 2 years after the incident, TechVision Systems had achieved record revenue growth and had been recognized as one of the region's best places to work for employees of all ages. Companies that discriminate against experienced workers are throwing away their most valuable assets. I had observed during an industry conference presentation about age discrimination, the team leader who had thought he could force me into retirement based on age assumptions had learned that professional competence isn't determined by birth year, and that family businesses often have hidden power structures that make discrimination particularly risky. Sometimes, the people who appear to have the least institutional power are actually the ones who own the company, and sometimes the most expensive. Lesson in professional respect comes from discovering that the senior employee you're discriminating against controls your employment and could have had you fired at any time. Jason Rodriguez had lasted 8 weeks as a team leader before learning that age discrimination can be a career-ending mistake, especially when you target the wrong person.